February 1995, Islamabad, Pakistan.
After this huge plot to kill thousands of people had been discovered in the Philippines, Yusuf is again on the run. He's been on the run for nearly 2 years now, and he flees back to Pakistan. He renews his acquaintance with Ishtiaq Parker.
Yusuf takes Parker back to Bangkok. The terrorist will use his young recruit as an instrument for swift revenge.
Ramzi Yusuf tells him to go and buy some hard-bodied suitcases, some hard-shell suitcases. He goes and does this. He also buys some clothes that can be used to put in the suitcase around the bomb, just as cover for the device.
And the source was carrying all the explosives. Ramzi was clean. Of course, wanted to make sure that there was nothing on him that would incriminate him in case he was stopped.
Parker starts to have doubts about this. He's very scared of Ramzi Yusuf. He's not as militant as Ramzi Yusuf by any means, and he's not convinced that killing several hundred people is a very good idea.
Parker makes an excuse and convinces Yusuf to abort the plan.
Parker is now very scared of Ramzi Yusuf. He's very worried about what he's going to be expected to do next.
The terrorist sends his young recruit back to Pakistan with new marching orders.
Parker's having none of this. He spots a US magazine on sale on a newsstand, which indicates there's a multi-million-dollar reward out for Ramzi Yusuf's capture.
By now, the FBI's $2 million reward for information on Yusuf finally yields a tip.
February 3rd, we received a telephone call from a female embassy employee that somebody was in her front yard acting a little strange, very nervous, very scared, and had a U.S. magazine, Newsweek or Time magazine, rolled up in his hand.
I then responded to the house to see what was going on in essence. And at first we chalked it up to someone just who wanted some money.
For his own safety, the DSS agents spirit Parker inside the U.S. Embassy for further questioning.
He began to speak of a laptop computer. He gave us physical characteristics that only someone in close and recent contact with him would be aware of.
The FBI decides to scramble an assault team to Pakistan. Parker informs the agents that Yusuf is again on the move.
Yusuf announced that he was going to get on a bus and leave the city, so then Parker slipped away and managed to pass this information to the US Embassy. The embassy realized things were moving too quickly. They had to capture Yusuf immediately.
The DSS agents must work with the terrified informant without the aid of the FBI task force. Yusuf is to board a bus for Peshawar. The DSS realize he must be prevented from reaching the tribal region.
He would have been gone because he would have fled. He would have gone into Peshawar, from Peshawar over the Khyber Pass into Afghanistan.
While American and Pakistani agents stake out the bus terminal, the informant again makes contact.
We received a telephone call from the informant saying that Yusuf had changed his plans.
He's not going to the bus station now. We're going up later. He's at the Sukasa Hotel. He's going to take a nap in a few minutes. Again, we moved over towards the Sukasa.
The embassy immediately requests the aid of Pakistani law enforcement.
The ambassador asked for their immediate assistance in response to the Sukasa guest house and explained to them that we had very good reason to believe that Ramzi Yusuf was in country, that we thought we would be able to take him very soon.
There was a very real possibility that we might be able to finally capture this guy, Ramzi Yusuf, in Pakistan, but we had to do it very, very carefully. I had prearranged with the informant to go across the street, go into the guest house.
Ishtiaq Parker went up to his room. He established that Yusuf was certainly still there and appeared to be building yet more bombs, stuffing explosives into remote-controlled children's cars.
If indeed Yusuf was in his room, once they finished, he was supposed to come out. He was to take a ball cap that he had off of his head and rub his right hand through his hair.
Parker came out of the building. He ran his hand through his hair to indicate that Yusuf was there, and the American and Pakistani agents began their raid.
I went to the front door, and the Pakistani authorities went in first.
Where is room 16? They shouted. They began swarming up the stairs, American agents with their hands on their guns, Pakistani agents already with their guns in their hands leading the way. They gathered outside room 16.
ISI broke through the door. Ramzi was on his bed, asleep, probably had been asleep for only a few minutes. They jerked him out of bed, threw him up against the window.
Spread his legs and then checked his identity.
The ISI agents kept control of him. He was very compliant.
One of the Pakistani agents said, "Is this the guy you're after?"
Didn't open his eyes, didn't utter a sound. Finally, I gestured to the ISI agent to turn his face to me.
I pulled out a picture I had in my jacket, and I held it up next to his head, and he looked at me, I looked at him, and I looked at the brigadier, and I said, "That's him."
And I said, "What's up, Ramzi?" That was the first time he'd heard English spoken that morning, and he realized that the Americans were there.
The feared Pakistani ISI take immediate custody of Yusuf.
The ISI agent went back around and pinched Ramzi on the neck and said, "The Americans will go home tonight, but I will stay with you." And I think Ramzi then had a little moment of truth. His eyes filled with tears. His knees basically went out from under him.
We come in behind them. They had taken a sheet and thrown it over him, so he looked like Casper the Ghost. They said, "We've got him."
When Ramzi Yusuf is caught, it's a key piece of the web because he's the mastermind of the World Trade Center bombing and so many other plots. But as the agents were moving in on that guest house, a guy across the street who saw what was going on took off. And that was his uncle, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And Ramzi Yusuf's uncle had all the remnants of all of the plots that Ramzi Yusuf had in progress. And he took these and he found his way to Al-Qaeda.
Yusuf is taken to a safe house where FBI agent Garrett confronts him.
I go in and they have him in a room. There's a guard on each side of him. His arms are restrained. So we have a little bit of small talk. We talked a little bit about explosives because he had part of a finger missing. He said those were bad attempts at building bombs. I said to myself at this point, I just might as well just drive right through the front door. And I said, "Well, did you blow up the World Trade Center?" And he pauses and he says, "No, I masterminded blowing up the World Trade Center." I said, "Okay, can we talk about that?" He was just very proud about what he had done and knew that it needed to be done because of our involvement in Muslim countries and in particular our relationship with Israel. He wanted to, quote unquote, force us to change our policies. But he started complaining early on that he was really upset with the people that were driving this attack, that were pushing him to get it done. Said they didn't give me enough money, they didn't give me enough time. He was arrogant, self-assured. He says, "You have to guarantee me one thing." And I said, "What is that?" "That I look presentable in professional clothes in front of the media." He wanted to make a positive, I guess, impression or appearance that he was a guy who had it together.
To convince the Pakistanis to allow Yusuf's extradition to the U.S., the DSS agents must revert back to their mission of diplomacy.
We were able to put the pressure on the Pakistani government that was appropriate without embarrassing them, but at the same time, making sure that they gave us Ramzi Yusuf.
Benazir Bhutto, the Pakistani leader, agreed that Ramzi Yusuf could be flown out of Pakistan and returned to America to stand trial, which was difficult for her to do because there were militants in her own government who weren't happy about cooperating with America.
Ramzi Yusuf is loaded onto a military plane headed for New York's Stewart Air Force Base.
I took the Port Authority chopper from New York up to Stewart, along with several individuals from the New York office, and we waited for the flight to arrive.